Reuters says Facebook temporarily allows posts on Ukraine war calling for violence against invading Russians or Putin's death.
What?
That to me is absolutely amazing. They say Meta platforms will allow Facebook and Instagram users in some countries to call for violence against Russians and Russian soldiers.
So civilians and soldiers.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
In the context of the Ukraine invasion, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Does that mean you can be like, I just plain don't like the invasion, and then say just kill civilians or something?
Like every Russian should pay,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Until when? You know, and the thing that I don't understand about all of these sanctions and even just these ideas that you got to take it out on Russians. And I even saw this video that was circulating of this group in Canada that was painting. They were vandalizing a Russian community center. You know, and they were painting all over it blue and yellow. And it's just, okay, if we in the West continue to assert and believe that Vladimir Putin is a dictator and that that they don't live in a democracy, then why would we take anything out on the people? What purpose is that? Because you'd only do that if you think the people are then going to turn around and pressure their government, or you're punishing them for voting that government in like they were a democracy and look at the bad choice you people made. Right. But if you don't believe it's a democracy, then what are you doing?
Well, so the reason I think this was an excellent segue from the previous segment, Ian was talking about how there could be an executive decree like, okay, now this thing is not allowed anymore. In this instance, we're seeing what happens when we end up in corporatocracy, where our social discussions, our society is being ruled by technocrats in Silicon Valley who change the rules on a whim.
Mark Zuckerberg, apparently.
They'll say, you can't do these things that are against the rule. And then when they want to enact massive societal change, they'll come out and be like, you are now allowed, peasants. Do as we say.
Yeah.
That's creepy. And
I see. Calling for violence against invading Russians.
That's not what it says. No. Russians and Russian soldiers in the context of Ukraine invasion. What that means,
you frame it that way.
It depends on what it means. So we'll have to see the exact policy. They say, as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we have temporarily made allowances for forms of political expression that would normally violate our rules, like violent speech, such as, quote, death to Russian invaders. We still won't allow credible calls for violence against Russian civilians. Okay, that's an important distinction.
Except who's a Russian invader?
Right. The Russian military. What about a guy who's like in Vladivostok, who's like chilling on a boat? Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
now, like
the guy making the steel, like in the middle of the country that is getting shipped to make the tanks. You know, he's part of the war machine now, even though he's a civilian. But they're pretty clear that they don't want to target civilians.
But again, the definition of a civilian is where it gets really muddy. And that's what's going on even with the war, you know, when they're talking about, oh, these civilians are being killed in Ukraine. And it's like, well, okay, but who do you classify as a civilian when they're conscripting everybody, giving them a gun, telling them to fight? So if every male 18 to 60 years old is given a weapon and told to go fight, now his civilian
militia
is no longer. But I think they might be counting them as civilians.
No, for sure, I agree. But you'd have to call them militia. You'd have to say, like, you know, Russians kill 12 militia. They're not doing that because it's all a big propaganda machine.
Sure.
This stuff scares me because it sounds, some people would argue it's reasonable. Oh, but we're talking about war and violence. And I'm like, I don't care. You know, we have two problems here. One, I don't think you should be calling for the death of people. I think you can say, we're being invaded and I will defend myself and defend my country. That I understand. But to be like, I am calling for the death of this group or whatever. The other issue is that the rules of our society and what ideas are allowed are being dictated by technocrats who are unelected. Now, that's a scary prospect. You want to claim Vladimir Putin is bad because he's a dictator? I'll be like, sure. What about our society being dominated by Facebook and Google? How much industry is digital now? How many people have jobs that are based on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or whatever? And these companies, but with private platforms, they can just eliminate you from your entire job, gone in an instant, because they decided it.